Hello, welcome to Getting Started With, where our job is to make your job easier. On this episode, we are getting started with the Global Internal Audit Standards Domain 5, Performing Internal Audit Services. The Global Internal Audit Standards came out almost 11 months ago, back in January 2024. Internal audit teams have until January 9th, 2025 to meet these new standards and ensure they're in full conformance. In this video, you'll learn about the principles and standards in Domain 5, Performing Internal Audit Services, and how they affect your role as an internal auditor. Also, if you haven't seen our episodes on Domains 1 and 2, be sure to check them out. So, let's get started. Domain 5 is all about the everyday work of performing services to provide assurance, advice, or both. Let's jump into a term to learn to help you better understand the daily work of internal auditors. Assurance services. Services through which internal auditors perform objective assessments to increase stakeholders' level of confidence about an organization's governance, risk management, and control processes. The primary stakeholders are the board, senior management, and the management of the area or activity being assessed. Examples of assurance services include compliance, financial, operational, or performance, and technology engagements. The objectives and scope of assurance engagements are based on an assessment of risks relevant to the activity under review. Our next term to learn is another example of an internal auditor's daily work: advisory services. Services through which internal auditors provide advice to an organization's stakeholders without providing assurance or taking on management responsibilities. The nature and scope of advisory services are subject to agreement with relevant stakeholders. Advisory services are also known as consulting services. When internal auditors perform advisory services, the nature and scope of advisory services are not necessarily based on a risk assessment. Instead, they are based on an agreement with stakeholders requesting the engagement. Examples include advising on the design and implementation of new policies, processes, systems, and products, providing forensic services, providing training, and facilitating discussions about risks and controls. When performing advisory services, internal auditors are expected to maintain objectivity by not taking on management responsibilities. All standards apply to both assurance and advisory engagements, with a few exceptions pointed out in Domain 5 standards. Domain 5 contains 3 principles and 14 standards. Let's learn more about them. Principle 13, plan engagements effectively, states that internal auditors plan each engagement using a systematic, disciplined approach. This principle is all about understanding the expectations for planning a single internal audit engagement from the broader internal audit plan. The engagement planning principle is supported by 6 standards. The standards cover the requirements and considerations for communicating throughout all stages of the engagement and gathering the information needed to understand the activity that will be reviewed. The standards supporting this principle also cover performing an engagement level risk assessment to help determine the objectives and scope, identifying the criteria that will be used to evaluate the activity under review, and determining the resources, tasks, and methodologies needed to develop a work program to achieve the engagement objectives. Principle 14, conduct engagement work, says internal auditors implement the engagement work program to achieve the engagement objectives. This principle and its related standards cover all the steps internal auditors typically call field work. This is where analyses and evaluations happen, findings are identified, and recommendations, action plans, and conclusions can be made. Here's a term to learn you'll see used in the standards. Finding. In an engagement, the determination that a gap exists between the evaluation criteria and the condition of the activity under review. Other terms, such as observations, may be used. Principle 14 is supported by 6 standards. These standards provide requirements and considerations for performing analyses to identify potential findings and evaluating the findings to determine their significance. Determining an approach for resolving findings by addressing their root cause and mitigating risks to an acceptable level. Developing conclusions that summarize the engagement results, and documenting information that supports the results. Here's another term to learn that the standards often refer to: engagement conclusion. Internal auditors' professional judgment about engagement findings when viewed collectively. The engagement conclusion should indicate satisfactory or unsatisfactory performance. The third and last principle in Domain 5 is Principle 15, communicate engagement results and monitor action plans. Internal auditors communicate the engagement results to the appropriate parties and monitor management's progress toward the implementation of recommendations or action plans. This principle is about the communication that occurs at the end of the engagement and afterwards. It's supported by two standards which describe the requirements and considerations for the final communication, typically called the audit report, and the process of confirming that management has implemented recommendations or action plans. It's important to note that some responsibilities related to the final communication belong to the Chief Audit Executive. So, this section should be read alongside the standard to support Principle 11 in Domain 4, communicate effectively. Congratulations on completing Getting Started with the Global Internal Audit Standards Domain 5. In the upcoming episodes, we'll cover Domains 3 and 4 of the Global Internal Audit Standards. Thank you for watching. There's much more to learn. Check out the links below to download the Global Internal Audit Standards and access helpful resources including tools, podcasts, training, and more.